Hello everyone. Welcome to the official Six Path Weeb YouTube channel. Today's fanfiction feature is Naruko, the Girl They Abandoned, Part 2. Disclaimer. The content presented on this channel is intended solely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not claim ownership of any anime footage used in these videos. All rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Let's dive in. You've become truly incredible. This thought lingered in Sasuke Uchiha's mind as he reflected on the countless moments he had witnessed Naruko in action. The way she carried herself, the progress she had made, it was nothing short of remarkable. She had grown so much from the energetic girl he once remembered. Her skills match my own now. While I don't think she's surpassed me, she's definitely on my level. There's no way this is the same Naruko I once saw as the most inexperienced in class. To Sasuke, Naruko had always been the kind of friend he wished his older brother Itachi could have been. After Itachi left the village, Sasuke often found himself alone. He struggled to connect with others, often frustrated by their lack of awareness or understanding. Some saw him as distant, but Sasuke was just particular about who he let into his world. Then came Naruko, bright, persistent, and eventually, a part of Team 7. She's come so far from the overly energetic girl who wouldn't stop talking. At first, Sasuke didn't think highly of her. He assumed she would never take her training seriously. But everything changed after their mission with Zabuza. That was when Sasuke first recognized the strength Naruko carried within her, an untapped potential that rivaled his own. From that moment on, she became his rival, not in hostility, but in mutual respect. Team 7 is strong now. Naruko and I have grown so much. Sakura, while still working on her abilities, has excellent chakra control. She just needs to learn how to apply it in real situations. Despite the teasing and occasional arguments, Sasuke had come to deeply respect Naruko. Their rivalry pushed them both to grow stronger. Though he didn't always show it, Sasuke admired her perseverance. Even her energetic personality, which sometimes annoyed him, was something he had grown to accept. I've always known that cheerful side of her hides something deeper. Others are only just starting to realize it now. In some ways, we're alike. We've both had to face difficult emotions, and we both carry burdens. Sasuke had always sensed that Naruko's cheerfulness was a mask. Beneath it, she carried pain and frustration. And yet, she never let those emotions harm anyone. She chose to rise above, and for that, Sasuke respected her even more. Still, he never told her that he knew. It was a quiet acknowledgement between two people who understood each other in ways others couldn't. One day, I'd like to face her in a match. A real test of strength between equals. But I'll need to work on my Sharingan before that happens. Sasuke's thoughts were interrupted when he noticed Naruko flying by, moving swiftly toward the village. That was close. I almost let her spot me. I need to stop letting my mind wander like this. Meanwhile, Naruko was making her way back to the village, her mind filled with thoughts of her upcoming training session with Kakashi. She had made remarkable progress, especially in ninjutsu and taijutsu. Genjutsu, however, was still a challenge she hadn't quite overcome. She knew instructors like Kurenai would have no trouble catching her in illusions. Maybe I should grab a bowl of ramen before heading to bed. I hope Kyuubi lets me sleep peacefully tonight. I'll need the rest if I want to hold my own against Kakashi-sensei. Naruko stopped by her favorite ramen shop for a quick meal before returning home. It had been a quiet day, which she appreciated. Lately, she noticed fewer people staring or whispering behind her back. They were slowly beginning to see her as a capable ninja rather than the hyperactive girl in orange she used to be. Tomorrow's the day. I'll show Kakashi-sensei just how far I've come. Then maybe I'll get a bit of a break before the Chunin exams begin. As she settled in for the night, a thought came back to her. That's right, I promised Anko I'd spend some time with her in the forest of training. You mean like a date, right? The Kyuubi teased, its voice echoing in her mind. Naruko's cheeks turned red at the implication. No, Kyuubi. It's not like that. Humph, I'm just saying, you seem to think she's pretty cool. Am I wrong? Naruko couldn't help but imagine it, spending time with Anko beyond just training. Her mind briefly wandered into a dreamlike scenario where they were walking together, laughing, and sharing stories. I knew it, Kyuubi chuckled. You're just like when you had feelings for that Haruno girl way back. You get attached so easily. Snapping out of her thoughts, Naruko gave a soft sigh. That was different. I was young and didn't really understand my feelings. I've grown up since then. I think more clearly now. Well, I can't argue with that, Kyuubi replied thoughtfully. You've matured a lot, and yes, you've changed. But why Anko? What is it about her that draws you in? Naruko paused, considering the question carefully. She's experienced rejection, just like I have. Most people don't notice it, but I do. The village still judges her because of her past, because she was once trained by Orochimaru. But I can tell she's not like that. She's loyal, and strong, and carries pain that's not so different from mine. Kyubi went quiet for a moment, as if reflecting on what Naruko had said. I see, it finally murmured. So, it's more than admiration. It's understanding. Naruko nodded to herself. Exactly. We understand each other in a way others might not. That's what makes her special to me. As the night deepened, Naruko slowly drifted off to sleep, her heart calm and her thoughts filled with dreams of tomorrow's challenges, and the bonds that made her journey worthwhile. I like Anko because we share a similar kind of struggle. Difficult experiences can often bring people together. While challenges are often seen as negative, I've found strength in them. That's why I admire Anko, and why I refer to Sasuke as a close companion. The nine-tailed fox sensed that Naruko needed rest and retreated back into the quiet corners of her mind. I guess the Nine Tails has decided to give me a little peace today, Naruko thought to herself. With that, Naruko drifted into a calm sleep. She spent some time imagining what the next few days would be like. She was looking forward to showing how much she had grown to Kakashi-sensei and spending time training with Anko afterward. She knew her connection to Anko wasn't just about shared experiences, it felt like there was something else, something she hadn't yet figured out. Naruko wasn't fond of surprises, especially after everything she had been through since learning about the Nine Tails. But for the first time in a long while, she felt truly hopeful and excited for what was to come in her life as a ninja. The next morning, Naruko woke up from a peaceful dream, one of the first she had since graduating from the academy. Her life had always been full of challenges. She didn't have many friends growing up and often felt misunderstood because of what was sealed within her. These feelings wore on her, though she rarely let them show. But today felt different. For once, she wanted to wake up. She had something to work toward. An hour later, Naruko raced across rooftops toward the training grounds where she was set to spar with Kakashi. She didn't know exactly what was in store, but she was eager to show how far she had come. She was aware that Kakashi-sensei knew countless techniques she hadn't even seen yet, but she had grown stronger and was ready to demonstrate it. I hope he can see that I'm more focused and determined now. In just a few days, it feels like I've grown so much inside. She moved with incredible speed, fast enough to impress even an elite shinobi. At the training grounds, Kakashi stood before the memorial stone, remembering those who had gone before. He sensed a familiar chakra approaching and walked to the center of the field to meet Naruko, ready for a good match. Sure enough, Naruko arrived moments later. She stood proudly in front of Kakashi. Naruko, there's something different in your eyes today. What changed? Kakashi asked. These are the eyes of someone who has something to prove, not just to others, but to herself, she replied confidently. Kakashi noticed a subtle orange ring around her pupils, barely noticeable, but new. So, ready for our match? Kakashi asked with a grin. Of course. And just so you know, I'm taking this seriously, Naruko said, smiling brightly. Kakashi raised an eyebrow and chuckled lightly. Looks like this will be more of a challenge than I expected. All right then, let's begin. Kakashi vs Naruko, the match begins. Naruko and Kakashi stood several feet apart, sizing each other up. Kakashi watched Naruko carefully, expecting her to strike first, and she did. 2 shuriken flew toward him. He dodged them with ease and responded with 3 of his own, thrown with incredible speed. Naruko moved gracefully, evading the projectiles. She waited, planning her next move. I'll let him make the next move so I can get a sense of his timing and reactions. Kakashi threw a kunai, which Naruko dodged, but the kunai struck a tree and caused it to fall. That was close. Kakashi-sensei isn't holding back, she thought, adjusting her stance. She charged at Kakashi, aiming a kick at his side. He blocked with his arm, but Naruko used the momentum to swing around and try a leg sweep. Kakashi avoided it by jumping, then countered with a punch that Naruko narrowly dodged. She ducked low and recovered with a roll, springing back to her feet and forcing Kakashi to step back from a strong counter kick. Naruko then crossed her fingers. Shadow Clone Jutsu. 4 identical versions of her appeared, attacking at once. Kakashi tried to determine the real Naruko, but the clones overwhelmed him briefly. He quickly took them out with precise taijutsu, only to realize the original Naruko was gone from the fray. She was perched in a treetop, watching and waiting. Channeling chakra into a kunai, she shaped it with wind energy into a curved, sharp-edged form. She threw it, and Kakashi dodged, but didn't expect it to curve back. The kunai grazed a strand of his hair before returning to Naruko's hand. "That was clever, Naruko," Kakashi said, impressed. "You caught me off guard." Kakashi lifted his headband, revealing his Sharingan eye. "You're using that now?" Naruko grinned. "Guess I really have improved." Kakashi launched into a series of strikes. Naruko dodged most of them but took a light hit to her chest that sent her sliding back. She caught her breath and stood again, determined. They exchanged blows, taijutsu at a rapid pace. For Naruko, it was a test of stamina and skill. For Kakashi, it was a gauge of her progress. Kakashi switched tactics, moving onto the river's surface and forming several hand signs. "Water style, water dragon bullet," he called out. A massive dragon-shaped stream fired toward Naruko. Thinking quickly, she responded. "Water style, water encampment wall." She surrounded herself in a shield of water, deflecting the attack, though it used up a fair amount of her chakra. Still in motion, she used the remaining water. "Water style, hand of waves," she declared, sending a jet of water toward Kakashi, who dodged it smoothly. Kakashi created 2 shadow clones, but Naruko managed to defeat them after a spirited exchange. Though she was starting to tire, she was far from done. Kakashi moved again, and Naruko shifted her strategy. "Time to finish this. I'll put everything I've got into one final technique." Wind style, great breakthrough. A strong gust of wind burst forth, flattening the area in its path, but when the wind cleared, Kakashi was nowhere in sight. Unbeknownst to her, Kakashi had used an underground technique to avoid the blast. Naruko sensed something and responded quickly. Wind style, whirlwind fist. She punched the ground, releasing a small whirlwind that tore up the earth, revealing Kakashi's position. But the Kakashi that appeared dissolved into a puff of smoke. "A shadow clone," she gasped. "Yield, Naruko," came Kakashi's voice from behind her. He stood with a kunai near her shoulder, not threatening, but firm, signaling the end of the match. "I guess I have no choice." "That was a great match, Kakashi-sensei," Naruko said with a smile. Kakashi removed the kunai gently from Naruko's neck and placed it back into his pouch. He then deactivated his Sharingan and pulled his headband down to cover his eye once more. "It truly was a great match," Kakashi replied, his tone calm and respectful. "You showed excellent technique and a strong grasp of your abilities. I was particularly impressed by the way you used the whirlwind fist while I was underground. That was clever, you almost caught me off guard." Naruko smiled softly, though inside, she couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. She had hoped to surprise her teacher more, maybe push him further. The most she managed was knocking off a bit of his hair and landing a few light hits. "Don't be discouraged, Naruko. Remember, I'm a Jonin with a Sharingan. It's not easy to get through my defenses. The fact that I actually had to use my Sharingan and couldn't relax with my usual book says a lot about your growth," Kakashi reassured her kindly. Naruko's spirits lifted a bit at the praise. Hearing that from Kakashi meant she was getting stronger, and that her hard work was being recognized. "You've earned some rest after the training session," Kakashi continued, "but before you go, there's something important we need to talk about." Naruko sat down on the soft grass, expecting a lecture or a detailed explanation about what came next, and she was right. "Now that your solo training is complete, it's time to rejoin Team 7, Kakashi said. Naruko looked down with a small frown. She had been enjoying the time spent working on her skills independently. She had grown more focused and more aware of her own potential. The idea of returning to her old team wasn't very appealing right now. "I know it might not be what you were hoping for," Kakashi acknowledged gently. "But there won't be many missions before the Chunin exams begin. You'll only be meeting with your teammates for brief group sessions in the mornings." "How do you know when the Chunin exams are starting?" Naruko asked, raising an eyebrow curiously. Kakashi scratched the back of his head, slightly caught off guard. "I'm not officially supposed to know," he admitted, "but since your training was extended, the Hokage shared the timeline with me to help with scheduling. Visitors from other villages will start arriving soon, maybe even in a day or two." Naruko looked up at her teacher, the orange ring in her eyes briefly glowing again. It had vanished earlier but now shimmered once more. Kakashi noticed it with quiet concern. "That ring. I wonder what it really means. A special ability?" A technique I don't know about? Or could it be connected to the Nine Tails? It's not the right time to ask. Later, maybe. Alright Naruko. I'll report everything to the Hokage. You've done great today, so make sure to get some rest. You used a lot of chakra back there. And with a swirl of leaves, Kakashi disappeared, leaving Naruko alone in the peaceful training ground. She stared at the spot where he stood. I didn't even manage to hit him with a single jutsu. A few punches and kicks, maybe. But nothing decisive. I've still got a lot to learn. And now I just want to get home and rest. Everything feels sore. With slow steps, Naruko began heading toward her apartment, her energy nearly gone from the intense training. At the Hokage's office. Your report? Asked the third Hokage, Sarutobi, as Kakashi entered. Training went well, Hokage-sama. Naruko has made great progress. Excellent. How would you rate her current skill level? She's performing at a solid low to mid-tuning level in most areas, except for Genjutsu. That's her one weak spot. She's not proficient at escaping illusions yet. I originally thought she was closer to mid to high, but this is still very impressive. Agreed. From the last rank Shannon to this level in such a short time is remarkable. You've done good work, Kakashi. I know Naruko is grateful too. There's one more thing, Hokage-sama. During the fight, I noticed an unusual orange ring appear in her eyes. It wasn't there before, and it reappeared when we talked about the tuning exams. I don't know what it is, but it seems significant. Sarutobi leaned back in thought. It might be a developing ability or a side effect of her connection with the Nine Tails. It's unlikely to be hereditary, Minato didn't have anything like it. Exactly. She didn't draw on the Nine Tails chakra during the sparring either. It was all her own. Maybe she's trying to avoid relying on it too much, testing her own limits. That's wise of her, the Hokage said with a nod. Still, the orange ring is curious. It may point to something evolving within her. We'll have to keep an eye on it. Understood. That's all I had to report. Well done, Kakashi. You're dismissed. With another burst of wind and leaves, Kakashi was gone. Back at Naruko's apartment. Naruko slowly walked in and sank onto her bed, every muscle in her body sore. Hey, Kit. Why didn't you use my chakra during the match? The nine-tailed fox asked, breaking the silence inside her mind. Naruko sighed. She had been expecting that question. Because I wanted to see what I could do on my own. I already know how your power affects things, it makes me stronger. But I need to know my real limits, and how to improve from there. Fair enough, the fox said thoughtfully. I do have one more thing. But Naruko had already dozed off, too tired to continue the conversation. The fox considered waking her but decided to let her sleep. The next morning, Team 7's usual meeting spot. Naruko arrived at the Red Bridge a few minutes early. She knew Kakashi would likely be late, as always. She looked around, only Sakura was there. Sakura noticed someone approaching, dressed in a new black outfit. At first, she thought it might be Sasuke, but the bright blonde hair and confident stance told her it was Naruko. She looks more intense than before. But she's not dangerous, Sakura thought. I could probably take her down if I had to. Squealed her inner voice proudly. New look, huh? You're trying to look all serious, but I doubt you're any different, Sakura said lightly. Naruko didn't reply. She calmly walked to the edge of the bridge and sat down, leaning back with her arms behind her head, eyes half closed. To Naruko, Sakura seemed more focused on appearances than growth. Naruko knew that without dedication and focus, a shinobi couldn't move forward. QB, she whispered within her mind, anything interesting to talk about? We've got a bit of time to kill. Well, you're supposed to meet up with that friend of yours in the forest later today, the fox said with an amused tone. It's not anything serious, Naruko replied. Just training or maybe talking. She's like me, an outsider who doesn't quite fit in. Could always become more than just friends, the fox teased. This was a mistake. You're never serious, Naruko muttered and decided not to engage further. The fox chuckled quietly, settling back. Naruko returned to quietly watching the clouds drift above, her thoughts calm and focused on the days ahead. Naruko opened her eyes to see that Sasuke had arrived as well. Kakashi appeared shortly after, only a few minutes later. Well team, looks like we're in brighter spirits today. And look who's made a return, our visiting teammate, Kakashi said with a lighthearted tone. Sakura and Sasuke glanced over at Naruko, who was quietly sitting on the bridge. Suddenly, A brown hawk flew overhead, chirping loudly. Just as I thought, Kakashi remarked aloud. He then reached into his pouch and handed each of them a form. These are registration forms for the Chunin exams. Soon, Jinan from other villages will be arriving here to participate. If you're interested, fill these out and return them to me by tomorrow. But if you'd rather stay as Jinan and continue doing the lower ranked missions, don't fill it out. However, just know that if one of you doesn't join, the entire team won't be able to proceed. Each member had already made up their mind. They were ready for this challenge, each driven by personal goals. Still, they were united in their decision. Alright, you're all dismissed, Kakashi said. As soon as he spoke, Naruko and Sasuke silently walked off, leaving Sakura alone on the bridge. When did Naruko become so quiet too? Is she trying to act like Sasuke just to win my attention? Either way, Sasuke will always be the one I focus on, Sakura thought as she daydreamed and happily skipped away. Training Ground 44, Forest of Challenges. Naruko had dropped her form off at home, placing it in a safe spot before heading toward the training grounds. On the way, she made a quick stop at Ichiraku Ramen for a bite before continuing to the Forest of Challenges. She stood outside the gates, curious about what lay beyond. Suddenly, she sensed someone nearby. So, you finally made it, huh? I was starting to think you'd never show up, came a teasing voice. And here I am, patiently waiting. You shouldn't keep a lady waiting, especially one as amazing as me. It was Anko. She unexpectedly wrapped her arms around Naruko's waist, and two small snakes slithered from her sleeves, gently winding around Naruko. Naruko looked down, startled. Ah! Please get them off, they're squeezing me. Anko burst into laughter as Naruko quickly slipped free and ran in circles, trying to shake them off, which only made them tighten. Anko chuckled to herself, amused. How long should I keep this up? She mused. Seeing Naruko roll on the ground in a panic, Anko finally released the snakes, which disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruko, still unaware, continued rolling before realizing she was free. She jumped up and looked at Anko. What was that all about? She exclaimed, clearly frustrated. Anko was laughing so hard she nearly lost her balance. After a few moments, she caught her breath. I just wanted to surprise you, she said between chuckles. Didn't expect that kind of reaction. I thought you were the calm, collected type, but I guess not. Please don't do that again, Naruko said, brushing herself off. Don't worry, Anko replied with a grin. Anyway, ready to head in? Naruko nodded, though she was still mildly annoyed. Anko jumped over the gate, and Naruko followed. They began moving swiftly through the forest. We're not going too deep, Anko explained. There are some challenging creatures in here, and I'd rather keep you safe. Naruko didn't protest, though she hoped to explore more deeply one day. That was close, Anko thought. Even bringing her this far could get me in trouble. I'm technically showing favoritism. Gotta be careful. Hey Naruko, she said suddenly. If anyone asks where you were, let's just keep this between us, okay? Naruko tilted her head slightly, curious, but nodded anyway. She could tell there was more to it but didn't press. They continued through the forest, encountering a few harmless animals along the way. Anko observed Naruko's abilities and was genuinely impressed. Eventually, they came to two trees with wide branches. Anko took one, and Naruko the other. Naruko broke the silence. So, why do you want to be my friend? Not many people try to get close to me. Anko had been wondering the same thing but found her answer in that moment. You and I. We've been through something similar. A kind of loneliness that others don't really understand, Anko admitted. Naruko looked at her quietly. The emotion in Anko's voice was clear. My mentor. He left the village. All he wanted was power, and he didn't care what happened to others in the process. He used me for his own goals, and when he was done, he left. Naruko listened, her eyes reflecting empathy. I trusted him, Anko continued. But he abandoned everything, his teacher, the village, even me. That's when I learned he only cared about himself. What was his name? Naruko asked gently. Orochimaru, Anko said quietly. Naruko was silent. She imagined how painful it would be if Kakashi suddenly left. Without another thought, Naruko leapt across the branches and gave Anko a comforting hug. It's okay, she whispered. One day, the truth will come to light, and he'll face the consequences. I don't know. He's very powerful, Anko said, her voice trembling. Then we'll become stronger, Naruko said firmly. I've got something he doesn't, and that gives me an edge. They sat together quietly, finding comfort in their shared understanding. Eventually, they returned to the entrance and leapt back over the gate. Thank you, Anko said softly. That helped more than you know. I usually don't share things like that. That's what friends do, Naruko smiled. Anyway, it's getting late. I should head home. See you soon, Naruko, Anko said warmly. She doesn't know how soon that'll be. If she makes it through the first part of the exam, I'll be seeing her again. Anko watched her go, a soft smile on her face. Back in Konoha, the next day. The three Jinan, Naruko, Sasuke, and Sakura, were gathered at their usual meeting place, waiting for Kakashi, who, as always, was running late. A few minutes passed before he arrived. You're late, Sakura yelled. Kakashi gave his usual carefree excuse. One of my eyes didn't want to open this morning. Quite the inconvenience, he said, clearly joking. Then he became more serious. All right, do you all have your forms? Each of them handed in their completed forms. Perfect. The exams start tomorrow morning at 8. You're all dismissed. With that, Kakashi disappeared in a puff of smoke. The three went their separate ways. Sakura went off to meet Ino for shopping, Sasuke returned to the Uchiha compound to train, and Naruko stood atop the Hokage monument, gazing at the village below. From her vantage point, the people looked like tiny specks, each with their own path. She knew many adventures awaited them all. As evening fell, the members of Team 7 each settled in early, preparing themselves for the big day ahead. Time skipped to midnight. The clock struck 12, and a peaceful stillness blanketed the village hidden in the leaves. The guards were at ease, enjoying a rare stretch of calm nights, thanks to a long-standing agreement among the villages to maintain peace during the Chunin exams, regardless of where they were held. With that understanding in place, the village rested quietly under the night sky. Everyone was fast asleep, save for one young Jinan who sat alone atop the roof of the building where her team was staying. Naruko, a kunoichi whose skills far surpassed what one might expect at her age, found it difficult to fall asleep. She gazed up at the crescent moon glowing softly overhead, her eyes filled with quiet contemplation. Mother. The gift you asked for will soon be ready. Naruko's Chunin exam journey. Naruko woke up at 7 a.m. sharp. She remembered that the instructions clearly stated to meet her team outside the first examination building by 7:30. Without wasting any time, she quickly prepared a bowl of instant ramen and headed out toward the exam location with determination in her stride. I know I'm going to do great in the challenges. I'm sure Sasuke will too. But I'm a bit concerned about Sakura. She seems confident, but sometimes she overestimates herself. I just hope our teamwork doesn't suffer because of that, Naruko thought as she made her way. Meanwhile, Tamari stood with her younger siblings. One of them chatted with her, while the other silently observed the surroundings of the Hidden Leaf village with curiosity. How do you think we'll do against the other Jinan teams? Kankuro asked. We'll be fine, Tamari replied confidently. We have one of the strongest teams here. Our main competition will likely be the teams from Konoha. She glanced over at her younger brother, who stood quietly apart from the others. While his abilities made him a strong asset, he often worked independently, distant even from his own siblings. First examination building, 7:45 a.m. All the Jinan had gathered and were making their way into the building. They had been instructed to meet in room 3.01. However, when Naruko arrived, she noticed two individuals blocking the doorway. I'm sorry, no one can enter this room, one of the guards announced. But our exams are supposed to be in there. A frustrated Jinan exclaimed, clearly much older than the others. I understand, but I can't let you through, the second guard stated firmly. A small commotion began to form as the Jinan questioned the situation. What's going on? They're not letting us in, Sakura whispered to herself, confused. It's a genjutsu, Naruko and Sasuke both realized at the same time. Naruko smiled to herself. This is going to be interesting. I'll just dispel it for everyone. Focusing her chakra, she spoke clearly. Release. In an instant, the illusion vanished. The guards were gone, and it became clear they had all been standing on the fourth floor, not the third. The confusion had been an intentional test. Sasuke glanced at Naruko with a slight frown. Why'd she reveal the genjutsu like that? He thought. Team 7, along with the rest of the Jinan, made their way down the side stairs to reach the correct floor for the exam. Inside room 3.01. The room was filled with young shinobi and kunoichi. Some were sitting, others standing, all waiting for the test to begin. Several were double-checking their gear, counting kunai and shuriken to make sure they were prepared. Others were either talking quietly or meditating. One figure caught Naruko's attention, a genin with purple hair sitting on the floor with a set of blank cards. Each time the genin placed a finger on one, it spun briefly and then displayed surprising information. Curious, Naruko approached. "What are you doing with those cards?" she asked. "I'm gathering information," the genin replied. "I can use my chakra to pull up stats on other genin here, affinities, strengths, and more. Just name someone, and I'll show you." "Alright then. What about Sasuke Uchiha?" Naruko asked. The genin nodded, channeled chakra into one of the cards, and it began to spin. A moment later, Sasuke's face appeared, along with his stats. Sasuke has mid-level Chunin chakra reserves. His overall skill set is balanced across ninja arts, and he possesses the Sharingan. He's someone to watch out for. Naruko blinked. How did he get all that information? "Thanks," she said. "What's your name?" "Kabuto Yakashi." Naruko made a mental note of the name as she returned to her team, who were waiting calmly in a corner. Sakura stood near Sasuke, who appeared to be resting his eyes. Suddenly, the calm atmosphere shifted as an argument broke out between two genin, one from Otogakure and another from Kirigakure. Their disagreement escalated until a shinobi in a flak vest appeared from behind a nearby door. He carried an authoritative presence, clearly the proctor. "There will be no fighting outside of designated areas during these exams," he announced firmly. "Anyone who breaks this rule will be immediately disqualified." The two shinobi stopped, returning to their teams without protest. "Now, the next part of the exam will take place in the adjacent room. Once you enter, you may not leave unless disqualified or for medical reasons." The genin exchanged uncertain glances. And finally, the proctor continued, "This part of the exam is a written test. There will be 20 questions. 19 will be given right away, and the last will be delivered by Proctor Iviki Morino. You'll have 10 minutes to answer the final question." Many genin seemed relieved, until they heard the next rule. To pass, you must get all questions correct. That means a perfect score, 20 out of 20. To prevent cheating, we have 5 additional proctors monitoring the room. Anyone caught attempting to cheat will be disqualified. Naruko's confidence wavered slightly. I don't like written tests. "QB, what do I do?" "Relax, kid. I have a plan." The familiar voice answered in her mind. As the genin were led into the room, they took their assigned seats, each preparing in their own way for what was sure to be an intense challenge. One of the genin preparing for the exam was a quiet individual wearing dark sunglasses and a high-collared jacket. He calmly waited until all the other genin had taken their seats before the proctor signaled the beginning of the exam. Shino Aburame flipped over his test and began scanning the questions. The first 10 were fairly straightforward, standard knowledge that all young shinobi and kunoichi should be familiar with. However, the next 10 were significantly more challenging, designed in a way that made them almost impossible to solve in the limited time available. This has to be a test of our observational skills and how well we can gather information discreetly, Shino thought. Iviki Morino specializes in intelligence and analysis. This is likely a strategy-based evaluation. Subtly, Shino allowed one of his small insects to crawl up to the collar of his jacket and released it. The insect flew out, seeking out a genin who seemed confident in their answers. After locating a reliable source, the insect memorized the responses using chakra and returned to Shino, silently conveying the information. They must have included participants who already had the answers to test how we adapt. Impressive strategy. I wonder how many will try to complete this honestly. Might as well relax now, he mused, chuckling to himself. I sound like Shikamaru. In the back of the room, Shikamaru Nara had already leaned back with his eyes closed. He recognized the nature of the test early on and was waiting for the kunoichi seated in front of him to complete her answers. Once she did, he casually used his shadow technique to glance at her responses. He had been dozing for about 15 minutes, while the test had been underway for 25. The proctors moved silently throughout the room, observing closely like watchful guardians. Their sharp eyes were trained to spot any dishonest behavior. Several teams had already been dismissed after a teammate was caught attempting to break the rules. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the back of the room. Everyone turned toward the source. A surprised genin sat in shock, mouth slightly open. "Number 56, you're disqualified," said Genma firmly. But my pencil just vanished." The flustered Jinan exclaimed, still clearly startled. The rest of number 56's team may now exit with their teammate, Genma announced for all to hear. Next time, please refrain from attempting any distractions or tricks during the exam. The Jinan, visibly upset, was gently escorted out by exam officials, still insisting that something unusual had happened and that they were being misunderstood. About 10 minutes later, the door opened with a firm thud, and a tall, tan man with a few facial scars stepped to the front of the room. I'm going to give you all a choice to take the final question of the exam. This choice is entirely yours to make, no one else can make it for you. The Jinan in the room looked at each other in confusion, clearly unsure of what was coming next. However, if you choose not to take the last question, your entire team will be disqualified and asked to leave immediately. The tension in the examination room surged. Many Jinan began to worry if their teammates would hold firm or back out. Others questioned whether they could even answer the question at all. Doubts and uncertainty filled the air. And one more thing, if you choose to take the final question and answer incorrectly, you will not be permitted to ever advance beyond Jinan rank. This announcement sent the tension in the room skyrocketing. Some Jinan stood up and quietly exited, unwilling to risk their future, leaving about 30 teams still in the running. After the last person left, the proctor spoke again. Congratulations. You've just passed the first stage of the Chunin exams. A collective sigh of relief spread across the room. Some Jinan leaned back in their seats, others dropped their heads to their desks in relief. One heiress from the Hyuga clan nearly fainted from the stress, though it wasn't because of Naruko. The next 5 minutes are for you to rest and regroup. The proctor for the second exam will be here shortly. In the meantime, feel free to talk with your teammates. The remaining Jinan stood and regrouped in corners of the room. Some were buzzing with excitement from passing, others were simply glad their teams stuck together. So, Sasuke-kun, we passed the first stage. Are you excited? Sakura asked cheerfully. No. I knew we would pass, Sasuke replied calmly. Sakura's smile faltered slightly. She looked around for something to distract her rising irritation and landed her gaze on her usual target, Naruko. The blonde ninja didn't even have her eyes open, quietly meditating and paying no attention to anything around her. Why is she just sitting there like that? Sakura wondered. She's been acting different since our mission to the Land of Waves. It's like she's gotten more serious all of a sudden. Trying to brush those thoughts away, Sakura turned back to Sasuke and tried to strike up another conversation, but didn't get far. Meanwhile, across the room. We're one step closer to proving we're the best Jinan team, said Tenten with pride. Yes. The flames of our youth burn brighter than ever. Lee announced, drawing annoyed glances from several nearby teams. Neji stayed silent, using the moment to observe the competition rather than join the conversation. He was focused, this year had to be different. Last time, their sensei guy had pulled them out early. Now, with extra experience, they had something to prove to the other Konoha teams. 3 minutes later. Suddenly, the glass shattered and a figure sped into the room. Everyone's attention turned instantly to the front. Even Shikamaru sat up, Naruko opened her eyes, and Sasuke paused to look. The blur came to a halt, revealing herself as Anko Mitarashi. Behind her, a banner flapped dramatically. The glorious, strong, and independent Jonin, Anko Mitarashi, proctor of the second Chunin exam. Anko grinned as she saw the banner had landed perfectly. She glanced at Ibiki, who was now face-palming. All right, everyone, don't think just because you passed Ibiki's stage, you're in the clear. My part of the exam? Way tougher. At least half of you will be eliminated by the time I'm done. She scanned the room, noting familiar faces, the Uchiha, clan heirs, and even a quiet red-haired Jinan from the sand with a powerful presence. Her eyes finally rested on a cheerful blonde kunoichi, Naruko Uzumaki, who was stretching silently at her desk. With that, Anko exited the way she came, through the shattered window, and told the Jinan to meet her outside. Gotta say, I like her style, Kyubi commented from within Naruko's mind. I can hear you, you know, Naruko replied mentally, keeping a calm expression. I know. But she's confident, powerful, and has a wild streak. That's my kind of woman. I'd rather you keep those thoughts to yourself, Naruko said with a sigh, choosing to ignore the fox's playful banter. As the Jinan began walking to the training area, Naruko observed them closely. People's posture often revealed their mindset. Sasuke walked with his usual confidence, Hinata kept her gaze low, focused and determined, while others fidgeted or looked around nervously. Eventually, they arrived at their destination, a heavily fenced-off area known as the Forest of Death. Naruko smiled slightly while others looked around in awe. "This is where your second exam begins," Anko announced. "You'll be inside the Forest of Death for 5 days. Your goal is survival and completion. Each team starts with one of 2 scrolls, either heaven or earth. To pass, you'll need both." Gasps and murmurs spread across the group. "If you lose your scroll, you'll have to find another. Teams can use strategy, teamwork, and skill to get what they need, but no cheating. If you open the scroll before reaching the tower at the center, your team is disqualified." She paused to let the message sink in. "There are also creatures and terrain hazards in the forest. Be smart, work together, and don't take unnecessary risks." At that moment, Anko turned back toward the table where Genma and Kotetsu were handing out scrolls discreetly to each team. In a far corner, Gaara of the Sand was already using his third eye technique to spy on the process. "Go challenge the kid in black," whispered Shukaku in his mind. "I'm not interested in your suggestions," Gaara replied firmly, cutting the connection. He turned his attention back to watching the teams, strategizing carefully. 10 minutes later, Team 7 was called. Naruko, Sasuke, and Sakura walked over to receive their scroll. A minor debate occurred about who would carry it, with Sakura insisting Sasuke should, believing him to be the strongest. He accepted it without much comment. Anko handed them the scroll and offered a few more reminders. Just as Naruko was turning away, Anko caught her arm gently. "Hold on, Naruko. You have to promise me you'll make it out safe, all right?" she said, her voice soft but firm. Naruko nodded. "Don't worry, Anko. I'll be fine. Though, you might want to keep an eye on that redhead. He gives off a strong vibe." "I'll be keeping my eye on all of you," Anko replied with a smirk, her tone teasing as she ruffled Naruko's hair lightly. "Now go have fun in there, Foxy." Naruko's face turned a light pink as Kyubi began chuckling in her mind. "She likes you," it teased. "Not the time," Naruko replied, quickly shifting her expression back to neutral. After all the scrolls were handed out, the teams were led to various gates marked with bold red numbers. The numbers are red. Probably for dramatic effect, Naruko thought. Let's hope no one has to learn the hard way. Once each team was in position, the gate guards signaled the start, and the second stage of the Chunin exams officially began. The Forest of Death, Part 2 of the Chunin exams. All the Jinan teams had successfully entered the outskirts of the Forest of Death. Though none had approached the center where dangerous wildlife roamed, they were already feeling the effects of the harsh environment, including unfamiliar plants and exhausting terrain. Team 10 made their way inside, quickly forming a strategy around Shikamaru's sharp mind. "Let's stay near the outer edge for now," Shikamaru advised, pointing to a clearing near a group of trees. "This area should have non-toxic plants, and will stay well rested. Most teams will tire themselves out rushing in. When they're worn down and less alert, we can surprise them and secure a scroll." Huji and Ino nodded, both relieved that the plan involved resting and waiting rather than charging ahead into potential danger. They agreed to remain hidden and only act on day 4, giving themselves a solid chance at ambushing a fatigued team. Team 7, on the other hand, had a different strategy. They aimed to reach the safe house as quickly as possible. Led by Sasuke Uchiha, the team moved swiftly toward the forest's midpoint to wait for another team to pass by. "Let's set up camp near this tree base," Sasuke suggested. "Sakura, place some traps around the perimeter. We'll catch a team when they pass." Sakura was thrilled to be given a task directly from Sasuke. She felt proud to be contributing to their team's success. While she focused on setting traps, Naruko, quiet but determined, observed their surroundings carefully. Sasuke quietly thought to himself, Naruko's skills are far beyond Sakura's. She may lack precision, but her strength and instincts are something else entirely. I can trust Sakura to handle the setup, but Naruko and I are the key to getting through this. Elsewhere, the Sand siblings encountered a team from the Grass Village. The young Jinan looked like this was their first major challenge, and they hesitated as Kankuro stepped forward. "Just hand over the scroll. We'll let you walk away," Kankuro said casually. "No way. We won't give up without a fight," one of the Grass Jinan replied, nervous but trying to be brave. Gaara remained silent, watching them intensely. The air grew still, and the Grass Jinan became overwhelmed by the pressure. Tamari stepped in, hoping her younger brother wouldn't escalate the situation. "Gaara, we can handle this. Let's not overdo it," she urged gently. Gaara's sand moved almost on instinct, swirling around the Jinan and startling them. Before things went too far, Kankuro quickly stepped in to retrieve their scroll. A heaven scroll. Perfect, he said as they moved on. Tamari looked uneasy, glancing at Gaara. He had started gaining better control over himself in recent times, even if his quiet demeanor still made others wary. As the siblings reached the safe house early and without any visible trouble, the watching Chunin and Jonin were left speechless. Gaara stood atop the safe house roof, quietly watching the night sky, deep in thought. Though he said nothing, he felt a deep loneliness that no one else could understand. He longed to be free like the stars above him. Meanwhile, Team 8 had taken full advantage of their tracking skills. Shino had already sent out his insects to locate nearby teams, making it easy for them to secure their scroll with minimal confrontation. Their teamwork and discipline gave them a significant edge. As Night 1 came to a close, nearly all teams were resting, except the Sand siblings, who had already reached the next stage. Day 2, Forest of Death. Naruko awoke early, eager to squeeze in some light training before the others got up. However, she was soon interrupted by a group of Jinan from Kirigakure. Looks like someone from that famous team that beat one of our village's top shinobi. You must think you're pretty special, one of them said smugly. The three Jinan were confident that they had the advantage in numbers. What they didn't know was how skilled Naruko had become. Kirigakure no jutsu, she whispered. A thick mist surrounded the area, confusing the trio. The Kirigakure Jinan were startled by how similar the move was to one used by their own village. How does she know that technique? One asked in confusion. Within moments, Naruko's well-coordinated shadow clones moved silently, surrounding the group. In a flash, they secured the scroll they needed and guided the confused Jinan out of the area peacefully, ensuring no unnecessary conflict remained. Naruko then quietly returned to camp, placing the scroll in Sasuke's hands as he stirred awake. Sasuke looked at her, slightly surprised. So you handled some visitors during the night? He asked. Let's just say I made a big scary snake appear and they ran off. One of them dropped the scroll by accident, Naruko said with a wink. Sakura laughed sleepily. That sounds like something you'd do, she teased. Trick them instead of facing them. Sasuke said nothing, but inwardly he was impressed. Naruko's more resourceful than anyone gives her credit for. Either way, he said aloud, let's get to the safe house before we run into more teams trying to catch us off guard. Team 7 packed up and began moving steadily through the dense forest, hoping to reach the checkpoint without any major encounters. Elsewhere. Team 8 had secured their scroll and moved through the forest with care, using their tracking abilities to avoid unnecessary run-ins. Team 10 remained hidden on the edge of the forest, conserving energy as they took turns on lookout duty. Kuji munched on snacks while keeping watch. Team Guy had already reached the safe house. Earlier in the day, Neji and Gaara had exchanged an intense stare, both silently promising that their true match would come later. The second part of the exam continued, each team navigating challenges not just of skill, but of patience, teamwork, and self-control. For Naruko, it wasn't just about proving herself, it was about showing that strength comes in many forms, and hers was just beginning to shine. Time skip, 2 days later. 5 teams had already arrived at the safe house. Team 7, 8, and Team Guy were all present from Konoha. 3 members from the Sound Village were also there, along with the Suna siblings. The Chunin were expecting one more team to arrive soon, though they didn't yet know which one it would be. So, who do you think the last team will be? Kiba asked his teammates casually, curious about their guesses. It's down to 2 possibilities, Shino replied calmly, without changing his composed expression. Either the Needle Ninjas led by Shigure, or Shikamaru with Team 10. Hinata was lost in her own thoughts, quietly reflecting on someone she admired, the way that person had arrived with her team 2 days earlier. I'm so relieved that Naruko made it. I was starting to worry about her. She must have done something really important with her team while they were in the forest. I wish she was on my team instead of Kiba. Kiba is nice, but he can be a bit overconfident for my taste. Plus, Naruko could be with Sakura and Kiba could be with someone he likes. Then maybe I could be closer to Naruko. Hey, are you even paying attention, Hinata? Kiba waved a hand in front of her face, snapping her out of her daydream. Hinata's cheeks turned bright red when she realized she had been caught lost in thought. I'm fine, she stammered, still blushing. The Jinan waited quietly until the door opened and the final team arrived. It was Shikamaru and Team 10. Ino was smiling brightly, Kuji was still snacking on some chips, and Shikamaru entered with his usual calm demeanor. Now, 6 teams were gathered in the room. This is going to be a long wait, Shikamaru thought to herself. The Jinan spent the next day preparing mentally for what lay ahead, knowing their lives as shinobi from Otokakur, Sunagakur, and Kanahagakur were about to change. One day later, after the Forest of Challenge, Anko had gathered all the Jinan in the arena where the preliminary matches were to take place. Alright everyone, you've all passed the second stage of the examinations. But now, because there are so many teams, we need to narrow things down. We're going to have one-on-one matches to reduce the number of participants to 8, Anko explained. The next round will be held at the Konoha Arena, in front of representatives from the other villages. The excitement and nerves of the Jinan surged. This was their chance to prove themselves and earn promotion to Chunin. Hayate was supposed to supervise this, but she's not feeling well, so I'll be the proctor today. The rules are simple: when your name appears on the screen, you will face the other person whose name appears with yours. This will be a friendly but competitive match. Please keep everything within the arena, no unsafe actions. I'm sure some of you might be a little disappointed by that, Anko added with a quick glance at Gaara. Alright, let's get started. When your name appears, prepare to face your opponent. The matches are randomized, so you might be paired against friends, allies, or even teammates. The generator made a sound, displaying the names of the first 2 participants. Many Jinan gasped in surprise. They hadn't expected such a challenging match so early in the preliminaries. One of the strongest Jinan from Konoha was going to have to step out early due to the random pairing. Many silently hoped they wouldn't have to face either of those 2. That concludes everything for now. If you found this content valuable, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to my channel. Thank you for your support. Best regards. 6 Path Weeb.